our dear Father in heaven, Father, we're very grateful for the opportunity we have to live in Highlands, Utah. We're grateful for our constitutional republic that governs our land and even our city. We ask that thy Spirit will be with us to guide us so that we may make wise decisions that are of the greatest benefit for the responsibility of how money is spent in a wise and judicious and appropriate ways. We ask for thy guidance in this day and do so in the name of our Savior Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. I'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Different presentations. I think it'll be David Morton, so he'll probably walk us through a lot of it. Probably Aaron will chime in. So turn some time over to David to kind of walk us through. David, what I know you do here, Council, if you're on your Outlook, there was an email that came to you about 30 minutes ago. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep. The detailed budget should be in the inbox. So we're actually going to kind of tag team this one between Aaron, myself, and Jay. So Aaron is going to kick us off.
All right. Jay, can you move forward, please? So yes, welcome to our tentative budget work session, Mayor and Council. What we're going to go through tonight is, so here's our agenda. We're going to let you know what changes have happened since you last got a copy of the budget. So specifically, we'll hit public safety as well as then just some other general changes. Because public safety just happened this morning, so it's been an eventful day for us. Next, we're going to ask for your direction on a few things or consideration. I know some of the things that, some things I told you I'm not asking for direction on quite yet, but just things that I need you to start thinking about in preparation for making a decision. And then we'll remind you there's a couple things that we don't have quite tightened down yet in the budget, but we're hoping that we are imminently so there. So, all right, let's start with public safety. Okay, so this morning, the Lone Peak Public Safety Board approved a tentative budget, and if you remember, so this is discussing what has changed since you last saw it. So the police department is going to receive a 6% wage adjustment this year. Originally in the draft there was 8%, and then we do see reduced dispatch costs. So the dispatch has gotten us a lower figure because they had some miscalculations in their earlier figure. In addition, fire did the same thing as far as salaries go, where they are going to see a 6% increase in the tentative budget, and the new position that consisted of 2 full-time and 1 part-time position was not in the tentative budget, removed. All in all, next slide please, that results in about $230,000 decrease from what we were originally budgeting. And it is still an increase this year, so we're talking about $408,000 increase to Highlands assessment, but it is a decrease from what was in our first draft of the tentative budget that you all saw. We did decide on having a session May 13th ahead of the final budget adoption the next day. So it's going to be up in Alpine City, actually in their city council chambers at 7:30 that morning. While it is a board work session, if you can make it, we think it would be a great idea for you to be there, members who are not on the board. And then Lone Peak's meeting will be that next morning at 7:30.
So maybe the reason why we have a work session is we felt like it would be very important to talk about staffing levels as well as response times and level of service as we head into the budget. You notice we didn't fund the 2 full-time and 1 part-time.
We felt like we need to make sure our level of service, as we have not funded that, we're okay. And some of that will also come into the discussion that we've been having with Alpine about how is that level of service, and it's based off of the stations. Okay, is level of service coming out of each station? How's the response time, and where does it come and respond?
On the 2 FTE and the 1 part-time, is that 2 FTE per shift?
Yes, it's a full
Per shift.
full loading.
No,
3 shifts.
it's just
Two,
two full-time, one part-time total,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
which covers
It
the
is-
3
it's
shifts.
one extra employee to go to 9. I'm sorry, it's 2, 1 position.
An FTE to me is 2,080 hours. But here it's 6,000 and something because you have 3 people
No,
filling that FTE.
it's one, you're only really hiring one full-time fireman, but the way we do it, they're putting it down as 3 individuals because you have to staff for 24 hours.
The FTE that we're talking about here is 2080 hours.
Is how many?
2080 hours.
2080, yeah.
No,
Yes.
no, it's not. So
It's
we
like
actually are
about-
2912 is the amount of hours a firefighter works in a year.
Okay.
And we would be looking at adding essentially 1 position, so 7,860 hours for the year
Is an FTE.
Yes.
is,
Great question, though.
it requires 3 individuals to cover 1 position. So we have currently 8 positions. We want to go to 9 positions. That requires 3 to cover A, B, and C.
Got it.
I know it's confusing.
Yeah, it is confusing because of the term full-time equivalent always is translated to 2,080 to me.
No, but that's
But-
because
but when-
one employee.
When we're talking about FTE, we're talking about 3 FTE that we're adding, 1 full-time and 2 2 full-time and 1 part-time, right?
Yes, normally, if we were just going to add one position and it was going to be all full-time, we would be adding 3 FTEs.
Got it. Okay.
But it's 24/7, so we have to cover every hour of the day.
So
not
coming
just-
back,
One of those-
Not just
the work-
40 hours a week.
work session, if council, those who are not on the board, if you're interested in hearing the discussion, and I maybe, I don't know if I don't have a problem with them even participating, but being there to hear about the staffing levels, our level of service, how it responds out of each station, that will be on the 13th at 7:30. That will then help us head into our final budget approval, just to make sure if, this request by the fire department, they're saying, hey, we didn't approve those extra budget, the extra personnel, but if we get in, and that's, we have not reworked the interlocal agreement. If we add another personnel, and what we were proposing is probably coming out of that work session, we'll probably be proposing that the staffing levels based off what we hear from the chief is we might be advocating to have it changed 4 to high. When we go, we've staffed for 8, but if it drops down to 7, that we'd probably be advocating that 4 are in Highland and 3 in Alpine.
Mayor, can I ask a question? Chief, can you just tell me how many full-time firemen, paramedics you have and how many part-time?
So as combat firefighters, we have 19 combat firefighters. So we have
What does it
one.
mean, combat? Those are the ones that actually go out?
Those are the ones that are in the station. That's not including myself, Chief Beck, and Nancy, the
Okay.
3 administration. So we have 1 shift with 7 on it and 1 part-time, and then 2 shifts with 6 and 2 part-time. We hold about 30 part-timers and then another 3, currently 3 that are wildland part-time. So we grand total with admin about 55.
55. Now, what percentage of those are paramedics?
I would say 70%.
70%? Okay. Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
we've got about 5 or 6 that aren't. So yeah, 75%.
Okay. Anyway, we just want to clarify that, so, perfect.
And Aaron, am I remembering correctly from this morning that we are expecting something else to come in higher? Was it animal control maybe?
Yeah, Councilmember Smith let me know that looks like our animal control numbers are going up. So we're kind of waiting to get final confirmation on that before. We didn't put it in the budget because we felt like it wasn't quite set enough yet.
Well, it is final.
Dang it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I gave you the numbers.
Okay.
It took me by surprise, but those numbers are based on the number of animals that are brought in the year before from the 2 cities. So between the 2 cities, you're costs go up $20,000.
20,000.
10,000 per city, and I've got the exact figures, but those are the exact figures.
Yeah. In some
Yeah.
ways, it kind of feels like we're being penalized for picking up animals and taking care, taking them to the shelter. But I understand why it needs to be funded that way.
There's, since we're coming out of COVID and different things, there's a lot more being picked up. It's kind of interesting. There's a little more aggressive thing. So they're actually, the participation city from all the cities has gone up $100,000.
Wow. So there's just
we
a
were
lot
talking
more
about tentative
animals.
budget. It took me by surprise, but
We were
yeah.
wondering if there was any grant funding the shelter was no longer getting or anything as well.
no, it's all
Okay.
based on, yeah.
Okay. Well, so this is why this is a draft tentative budget. So we will add that increase in then if that's set. So there will be a slight shift, no matter what happens at the work session, there will still be a slight shift in the Lone Peak budget. Okay. I pulled up the little Lego man graphic for a minute in case that was helpful, but we can go back to the PowerPoint now. Okay, so I wanted to update you all on what does this mean for that 75% number that we've talked about. And I know that some don't feel like that's the best measurement. I do think that it's a helpful measurement because it just looks at what % of our property and sales tax is going towards public safety. Can we go to the next slide, please? And so it still ends up being higher than the 75%. But it's lower than it was. So with the tentative budget that was approved this morning, 79% of our property and sales tax has to go to our Lone Peak assessment to cover the gap of what our fee does not cover at this point. So I know that there's a myriad of reasons why, and we're kind of late in the game if we want to talk about property tax or sales tax increases, property or a public safety fee increase, but I did want to just kind of remind council that's something we had discussed, and this is probably something we talk about in a future year, but know that that's there. If we did,
Aaron, though I know you're presenting, and I don't want to interrupt, but at the same time, we established the public safety fee, and we've had 2 increases in it. So I'm not sure why we're pulling money out of the property tax when we're going up beyond what we kind of agreed that we wouldn't go up beyond. Why aren't we increasing the public safety fee?
Why aren't we?
Yeah, why not fund this increase from the public safety?
Will you go forward one slide for me? You
It seems like you
could.
have this dual thing, and just, we pull from one fund or the other. I think it ought to, any increases ought to come out of the public safety fee.
And you absolutely could. And so that's the first. If you do want, if council's committed to keeping that at 75% or below, here are your options. Number one, you could increase the public safety fee. It would be about a $4 per month increase to get us to that 75% rule. Alternatively, you could do a property tax increase, and it would be, $77 per year on an average home. So those are your 2 options if you do want to look at doing an increase. And I know that I'm trying to be judicious in my semantics here. Currently, we have it funded in the budget. Now, I know our budget is basically priorities, right? What does the council prioritize? And that's what we put money towards. And so it is funded in the budget based on the priorities you've given me to this point, where you don't have to do this, but know that it is creeping above what we have previously set we want to be at.
So let me just ask a question. So you're talking about if you increase the public safety fee, it's about $4 a month. So that's $48 for a home. But the average home here would get a $77 increase
Correct.
on property tax. How does that, why is
it different?
Yeah, because I don't understand that.
It's because every home is valued at a very different rate. If you remember back when we instituted this or the road fee, the numbers are always a little different, how it impacts you, whether you have a fee or a tax, right? David, do you want to go any more in depth than that?
Well, it depends on your property value, but
Right.
you're assuming that there's a lot of homes in Highland that are worth a lot less than $800,000, which I have a hard time believing anymore.
Yeah, and if that's the median, then we should have a larger spread on the upside than on the downside, I would expect.
Yeah, I would think it would balance out.
I guess if you look at the percent increases, they're pretty darn close. So we're talking about a 27% increase to public safety fee or a 24% increase to the property tax rate. And we can double check our numbers again. I mean, like we said, we did get these numbers this morning, and so David ran through the formulas, but maybe we did get something incorrect in that. I honestly didn't think that the council, based on previous conversations we've had about not wanting to touch property tax this year, I kind of assumed that that was true of public safety fee as well. So I apologize for not putting more emphasis on this. I did not think it was something council was interested in.
I think your assumption was correct. I don't think there's ever been a talk by the council to do a tax increase for public safety. We do need to be aware, I think your one bullet point you have above, we don't know where we're still at politically. We've been waiting for a bill to pass to kind of give guidance with the Karen Peterson bill, and it keeps getting, 2 years ago we thought it was going to pass. It had the public safety fee protected if you were in a district. This last one kind of had it, but it didn't pass. And so there's some ambiguity how the public safety fee will be going forward.
Well, right, but if we eliminate the public safety fee, then that's the time that you'd have to find other
Correct.
revenue.
Yeah.
But it just seems kind of a hybrid thing where we have public safety fee that we've created to fund the public safety, and then all of a sudden we're going back and taking property and sales tax. It just seems like we're not consistent. And I don't like any increases, to be honest. But at the same time, I think we need to look at this pretty carefully.
We do.
80% of your general fund.
Not of your general, it's of the property tax and sales tax.
Right. But that's your main source of your
It is.
general
It's what-
fund. And yes, we've branched off into other, like capital improvements and all these other things that are taking our impact fees and stuff. But it just seems like, when I was and this is for Wes, because I always say this, when I was on the council before, it was 50% of the general fund that was going to public safety. So I think you have to be careful.
Yeah.
Is this something you want to think about more, council members? Are we considering adjusting the public safety fee at this point?
I would like to consider it. I think that 75%, we came up with it, it seems arbitrary in one sense, but if we set it, we've got to live to it. And if there's an increase in public safety, the public safety fee is where we would naturally see that increase, even though it's only it's not a small, but it's a percentage of the total public safety cost. But going with property tax increase right now nobody has an appetite for that. And just doing it out of the general fund just seems to muddle it up. When we have increases, we've got to have responsibility of addressing those increases in the way that leaves other funds, general funds, available for other priorities.
I'm not a big public safety fee overall. I think that we will eventually need to get rid of this public safety fee sooner rather than later within the legislative session. It's coming. We know it's coming. So do we need to, we're going to eventually have to do a property tax increase to cover this. So do we want to do it at a higher fee or a lower fee when we do that eventual property tax increase? Also, fees are basically a flat tax on everyone. So you have somebody living in a $400,000 smaller house that's on a fixed income paying the same amount of rate as somebody who lives in a $3.5 million house. I think it's unfair.
Well, and I think that's a valid argument, but I've gone through a property tax increase in this city, and it's not easy. And so I think, my personal opinion is if we have to eliminate the road safety fee or whatever at some point, then we move that way. That's kind of where I'm at. And I understand your argument, but property tax increases get referred really quick in this city. So I don't know. I think it's hard to make a decision. But I think if you go up on the public safety fee, I think our public safety people need to come and defend why they need, over the last 4 years, we've increased the police by 41% and the fire by 57%. And I think, we understand why that is, but I think maybe the citizens don't. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. But I agree with you. But, at some point, we're either going to have to eliminate the public safety fee or use it. So,
And I agree with you.
So as we look at the fee versus the tax, it's hard, Kim, I get what you're saying, that you're saying, hey, a person at 400,000 shouldn't have to pay as much as someone at 3.5. And I guess I'm going, but they both use the service possibly the exact same way. Both, they're going to have the service the same thing. And I'm going, so I guess I go, it's an old adage. When you go out to dinner, I'm going to have my one friend pay 70% and the rest pay 30% of the bill. Yeah. And I'm just saying, I get the concept, but if there, that's a fee. Now coming back, is this the right time to increase the fee? It seems reasonable. If we have the fee, that's how you should be increasing it. But then you go look at your general fund, balance, and right now we're going to show a surplus of what's not funded. Now we just did pull out some public safety of almost 300,000. So you go, okay, we're going to go increase here. We have 300,000 is what we have in our budget that's not allocated. That means we have an excess of 300,000. Well, once we go and add this on, which is what, 411,000? What was the increase? Then you're going to be increasing above that 300. So now you have 700. Now, if we have priorities for it,
and then that's all your reserve.
Yeah, that's I'm just saying, and I think that's why we kind of said where we are. If you look at your sales taxes went up to try to help us with public safety. What's saved us a little bit is sales taxes increased. Can you go back to that slide that showed how your sales tax increased?
Yeah, while he's going there, can I just clarify, Mayor, the almost 300,000 surplus in the general fund right now includes this 408,000 increase in public safety already.
Okay, so explain that. Okay, say that one more time.
So when you were describing it, it sounded like we still need to take this 408,000
what I'm saying
out.
is if we increase if we say we're going to increase the public safety fee,
then we would have
it,
408,000
to cover
more
the
on top of the
408, then it would bring that into the general fund budget.
I just wanted to make sure that was
no.
clear.
I think I mean your sales tax. If we look in 2020, we're at 4.6, and right now we're projecting to almost go to 6.4. I mean, we have benefited by sales tax. That's what the sales tax is. What's kind of helped us fund the public safety.
Right.
And so, anyway,
It'll help us more if we had our own zip code.
and we've been after that. And so, yeah, good. Okay. Anyway, coming back, is there an assumption or a feeling of wanting to do anything with the public safety or property tax? Is how we see it right now in the budget.
I get Kim's point, and I hate it because it's always so logical, Kim. But I still would like to
to
address
my kids and husband. Come on.
Yeah. I still would like to consider it. I understand. I'm just not convinced. So I think we need to look at an increase in the.
I'm fine at considering it, knowing with our knowledge that eventually we're going to need to do a property tax increase to cover that when that does change and we're no longer allowed to do a public safety.
If we're not allowed to do it, I think we can go to the residents going, hey, you've been paying this, this money here as a public safety. You're not going to have that fee. It's now coming with property tax. So it's a bouncing act.
That'll be the easiest part of any property tax increase.
However, now we say that what we were talking about with Kim, you will have those who have a lower value house not have the same increase. Your 3.5 million is going to have a huge increase.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's equivalent from the aggregate, but not on an individual basis.
I do agree, though, from a with the mayor's earlier point, I think we need to consider the political ramifications of us putting a bigger target on us. If the state already doesn't like public safety fees, do we want to increase it to put a bigger target on us? But I do think that the state is going to force us to address this sooner rather than later. I don't know, but we have been saying that for a few years, right?
Yeah. Well, and I understand that, and I don't like any increases, but at the same time, I'm not sure, for transparency's sake, that one year we fund the public safety increase, which has been going up every year. It never goes down. So one year we fund it with the public safety fee. The next year we fund it with our property tax and sales tax, and then we just kind of go back and forth. Is that being transparent?
No.
Yeah, and so I mean, it keeps us from raising things. I guess it's nice at the same time, but I don't know. And it seems like we probably have some things that we can use. Some of the general,
as a resident, okay, go ahead and raise my public safety fee, but I want you then that 408. I want to go on my property tax to bring it down. I'm just saying, if you're going to take it here, and instead of you guys, pad your coffers here. Yeah, I'm just, so if we want to do that, I'm just saying for me as a taxpayer, I'm going, well, that's fine. If you're doing it now, lower my taxes the other place then.
No. So you would favor not doing anything, just taking out of the general fund?
Now, that's just because I'm not trying to do any increases. I think what you're saying, Scott, makes sense. If we put the public safety fee in there saying we're going to fund the public safety with increases, it makes sense to try to use the public safety fee. But what it does, it starts generating excess into our general fund. And I think that's where we have to still be good stewards of the general fund. It's hard.
I'm very sympathetic to Ron's point that if we set a target of 75%, then we should aim to keep it at 75%. That having been said, I do think that there are unusual circumstances this year, and I would be okay with going over with an agreement that we will get it back down next year.
So what unusual I'm just, what?
You always say you'll get it back down.
It never comes
Just
to
the political environment.
Is it because it's election year?
Potentially, partly because of an election year. Potentially, I'm thinking mainly just the overall kind of national mood and approach.
You got to remember what's going on nationally. Yeah, so what is anomaly is the federal government is trying to say everything cut. We have seen the state go and not fund some of their departments as well as the education. We're seeing it. Okay, what is the anomaly is in the news. We're seeing that for the first time, we're seeing a lot of state and federal saying cut, and as long as we're good stewards, I think the residents will be. But I do think that's maybe what you're saying, Doug. That could be the environment we're in.
Yeah, that's primarily the concern that I have there.
And I mean, to Mayor's point, then we need to decide what do you want to do with those funds, right? You need to have a purpose for them if you're going to raise, right? So that it's not just excess funds, probably. Okay. So at this point, continue to consider it as we see where Lone Peak ends up. Is that the direction I'm getting? Not firm yes or no, but let's just keep running the numbers for you so that we can continue to have the conversation?
Well, I just think we just need to be real transparent. And I'm not in favor of any tax increase or fee increase if we don't have to do it. But I just think for transparency, it's just kind of weird to go back and forth between the two funds. And at some point, we're not going to have the sales tax increase. At some point, we're not going to have these things. And so where do you stop? Is it when they take the whole general fund? I don't know. I mean, it's been creeping up every year. So I'm just concerned about that.
I agree. And long term, I absolutely agree with you, Scott. I am concerned because we've been in that pressure situation before, right? Where it has squeezed out everything else from the general fund and we can't fund other things. We are not in that position yet this year, right? But certainly don't want to get to a bad position. Right. At least as council has prioritized to this point.
Can I just add one little more nugget? So just for clarification, if we wanted to meet the 75% limit that has been established, we wouldn't have to fund that full 408,000 increase. It would only be about 285,000 of that we would need to increase the fee.
If what now?
So in order to hit that 75% goal, we don't need to fund the entire 408,000 increase. We would just need to fund 285,000 of it.
So you could raise it $2 per month or something?
No, that would be raising it the $4 per month would raise the annual revenues of about 285,000, and that gets us to the 75%.
We can that 408,000. We can absorb some of that and still stay under 75. It's just, what did you say? 280 of it we can't absorb to stay under the 75.
Well, good discussion. Sorry.
It's good.
I just think we need to talk about it. You guys need to be glad that Tom Butler and Tim Irwin are not here.
All right. Can we move forward? I think 2 at this point. Okay. I'm going to if we're done with public safety for the moment, I'm going to turn over to David to discuss other changes. Before he gets started, I'm sorry, David. So the changes that you are seeing in the budget now at this point are either changes like staff got new information kind of a thing, or it's based on the individual meetings that I had with you all. If I heard a majority consensus to change something, that's what you see in this.
All right, thank you, Aaron. So yeah, a lot of these were based on conversations we had with you in our individual meetings or discussion at prior council meetings. The first one is a small amount, but it was pointed out that this shows up in two different spots, as a revenue and then as an expenditure, and those didn't match up. So that $1,000 increase in the revenue is just to match up those two amounts. The next one, so the mayor had made a comment in a previous meeting about how we were calculating our interest budget. And to be honest, we haven't really used a really sound scientific method of doing that. It's kind of just been put your finger in the air and kind of guess. So that comment, Mayor, I appreciate that. It caused me the wheels to start turning a little bit of how we can better look at interest. So I did a quick analysis. Essentially, if you remember in the budget, there's the all funds summary page. It shows where we're starting in fund balance, how much we're going to be bringing in revenue, spending, and expenditures, using a fund balance, and what we expect to end with. So I used that as my kind of foundation for this calculation, and took the average expected fund balance for each of the funds, and then applied that to an estimated interest rate that we can hope to see, hopefully, for the next 12 months. And to calculate the 3.5% interest that I used, our PTIF account, the majority of our funds sit in, it tracks really closely with the federal funds rate. And so I looked at their future projections. I will say that my analysis was before the tariff announcements. But so far, the Fed has stayed pretty steady with their approach of wait and see if inflation is going to start increasing, and if we start to fall into recession, then maybe they'll react. But for now, they're staying put, and their members of their board have projected about a 3.5% rate for the period that we're looking at now. Their number was actually a little bit higher, but I went just a couple of basis points lower to keep us a little more conservative.
So you're more conservative than the Fed?
In this instance, yes.
That's interesting.
So the result of that, the reason I think it was an important thing to do, and I appreciate the mayor for asking the question, is it created about $165,000 more interest revenue in our various fund budgets. That is citywide. It's heavily in the capital project and enterprise funds, because that's where a large amount of fund balance is sitting, but a decent amount in the general fund as well. So that enables us to program more in the budget, as well as have that almost $300,000 surplus. So any questions about that change in the interest calculation? And we'll keep our eye, before final budget, we'll keep our eye on what the rates are doing and see if we need to adjust that down. But for now, we feel pretty good about it. The next change, so the mayor proposed another question to us about the court. As you know, we manage the court, we run the court, but Alpine also participates. And there's, depending on the type of cost and who the vendor is, the way it is charged is a little bit tricky. There's some things that are charged directly to Alpine and directly to Highland. There's other things that are charged only to Highland, and then we in turn bill Alpine for their portion according to the interlocal agreement that we have with them. So we did an analysis, a review of our billing, what we've done in the past, and found some inconsistencies there with what the interlocal agreement says. And so this change, and we also inconsistency in how we've been budgeting for that. So this change is in relation to all of that. The biggest reason for the change is, in the past, the prosecutor fee has been charged directly to the two cities at 50%. That was just because the prosecutor didn't want to go through the hassle of splitting out the cases by city. The actual split of cases is more like a 70-30, for Highland being 70 and Alpine being 30. The interlocal agreement says everything is split 60-40. So our proposal was to have the prosecutor charge us 100% of the bill, and then we will bill according to the interlocal agreement, the 40% for Alpine. So that's where we're seeing this increase in the revenue of 42,000, and then a corresponding increase in our costs of 40,000. So the net is not much different. But. Next slide, Jay. Garbage collection fees. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Jay has some additional slides to talk about garbage fees. But as you know, we've seen increases in our costs, so we're recommending some changes to the fee, and we'll show you what those are. In the library, we received instruction to transfer money from the general fund in order to balance the library. And so we've made that change. So instead of the library fund using any of its fund balance, we're instead transferring money from the general fund to library. And we've also added an increase to the director's wage to get it up to where it should be. Parks capital improvement, some of the bigger ticket items that I think Chris can answer more detailed questions on. We didn't have in the budget, the prior version of the budget, the Mitchell Hollow Trail project. So we've added that. It's funded by a grant from MAG. So we added both the grant and the expenditure, the offset. Next slide, Jay.
On the library director, is that based on the increases that she did not take and rolled it over into the budget?
So this
Had
is
she taken it, is that amount? Or
this
does
is not
say-
a retroactive for prior years. It's a getting to the correct amount for the next
Right.
fiscal year.
And not being retroactive for prior years, by the way, on the math side of it, is she loses a lot of money still because she didn't get that money those years. So we're just bringing her up to what it would have been had she had those increases.
Right.
There's a big gap on what she didn't get. And that's just the reality of business. And I wish we could do it differently, but I understand that that's the more equitable way to do it, but not equitable to the library director. Equitable to our responsibility for the funds and the budget, et cetera, et cetera. It's just unfortunate that that money was lost.
If council wants to do a one-time bonus, that is something we certainly could do. I just did it based on what I was thinking the direction was, is let's just fix the wage, but I didn't consider retroing. So maybe that's something we talk about more or think about more over the next little bit.
Yeah, I would like to think about it because it is a difference.
I mean, and I know, Doug, you have a question. Since we're asking about the library director, when they retire, when someone retires as a tier 1 employee, is it the last 3 years? Do they look at the last 3 years that they're in?
It's not the last 3 years, it's the highest 3 years.
I mean, that, to be very open, that's one of the things that could hurt our library director. I know you're here, Donna. I just, by not having her there for 3 years, if there's something, in the future, that's, so what, I think we need to be sensitive there.
I think,
And that,
I don't know if this works. I think I need to remind you that this was not something that was imposed on me. This was my choice.
Okay.
And so I don't feel like you're obligated to do any kind of compensation. It was a choice that I made. So I'm not expecting any
We
of that.
appreciate that, Donna.
It actually gives me more interest in getting it right, in doing it the way that I believe is the most equitable, because it's not about you, it's about that position and funding that position and having, when you leave, that you have your percentage on the highest 3 years be where it should be equitably, not diminished in any way, and for your replacement at that time when you do leave, that it's up there where it needs to be. So I see this as more an equity situation. It's not personal. And I understand and I appreciate where you're coming from, but it makes me want to be all that more sure that we do it the right way.
That's because you're just a really nice guy.
and am I correctly recalling that $11,000 that we're transferring from the general fund to the library fund is intended as a partial repayment of taxes that for 10 years we were collecting and not?
Based on the taxes.
Okay.
That was the understanding. What I think when the council, when it came up, was we had 10 years that there was property tax collected on vehicles that should have went to the library that did not for 10 years. And so as we discussed it, we felt that that might be a way to close some gaps for the library. And I think that's what the rest of the council. Would you mind just going back to one question on the grant? I did have a question on that grant. Don't we have a match? Is there not like a...
Yeah, I was actually going to clarify that as well. We already had the match in the budget of 125,000. We just needed to add the MAG portion of that.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
since we're the ones running the project and paying for it. All right, back to the next slide. So another grant, this one for 4800 West widening. This one is a combined project with Highland and Alpine. Our portion is, let's see, what would that difference be? I can't do math that quickly in my head, but 5.4 million is the MAG portion, and then Alpine is contributing 140,000. So the rest of that is our portion.
Is this the roundabout? Or?
No.
No, this is 4800 West.
Oh, 48, I'm sorry.
That intersection with Timpanogos Highway. Yeah.
So we're anticipating it hitting this year.
Yes. Yeah, the funding is available in December of 2026, so this fiscal year.
I thought we were outside the funding round.
That is for the next phase of 4800 West, which is south of the Timpanogos Highway.
Okay. So that will be coming up this next year. That 4800 West, there'll be engineering, and then it will be coming in as a project. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Next one down, we added in...
Chris, when you say that the funding will be available, did I correctly understand December of 2026?
Correct.
Isn't that next, the fiscal year after the one we're...
January of 26.
Okay.
I caught that.
Good question.
This is an embarrassment. I caught that, but I thought I must be missing something, so I let it go.
That's how I felt this morning in the meeting. So.
It's investigational math.
Next one down, we've added in the 11200 North connection project. Aaron made sure that I said that correctly because I'm not used to saying 11200. 11200 North connection. This would be using impact fees that have previously been collected in the Roads Capital Fund. We currently have a little bit over $650, close to $700,000 in impact fees there. So this would be using less than half of that.
Does this factor in any possible purchase of land, or is this the most narrow approach we have, which would be the least costly?
That number does not include the purchase of land, but that is kind of a number that when we were looking at that was my estimate that I came up with. But when I went back and did some research into the impact fee facilities plan, they actually had like a $300,000 fee on that. It was actually, when they accounted for interest since the fee was originally enacted, I think the total amount was $380,000. So I at least felt like that was a pretty good confirmation on the estimated costs.
So I'm going to ask a question about it. So do we have this planned out? Is this shovel ready? I thought we just talked about it.
No,
the general plan.
It certainly isn't shovel ready yet, but
Okay.
we have ordered I have asked for some costs to do some survey and design work, and we are trying to get moving forward.
So we don't
with
know
that.
the total cost. This is money going towards the plan and design and...
Yes, this is based on the estimate that we have for the construction costs.
Okay.
And for the other $300,000 or $400,000 of impact money that we've collected, do we have any particular urgency in spending that, or do we have another couple of years?
That's something that David and Chris and I need to spend a bit more time in because, as we all know, there's a time limit to impact fees, how long we can keep them. One thing we need to look into is how the city paid for Canal Boulevard, because that was an impact fee eligible road, and I'm not sure if we used impact fees for that. And if we did, then essentially we can use that remaining 300-ish thousand to reimburse the whatever fund source was used for Canal Boulevard. So an analysis we need to figure out.
All right, go back really quick. One more item on this page. We added some seasonal employee hours in parks to help with maintaining the bike park.
So what do they do to maintain the bike park?
Raking, I don't know.
Spraying water.
Most of it is rebuilding some of the jumps that they have.
Rebuilding them?
Yeah, rebuilding and compacting it so that they're, still viable and usable and safer.
Okay.
So let me ask you, we've had volunteers that kind of put that in and got it going. It sounds like the city's taken on more responsibility here. I mean, I hadn't really, as a council, are we okay? This bike park, we're starting to take on more and more of the maintenance and things of that nature.
It's actually, I think, very responsible way to spend our money, that we leverage it with a volunteer organization that's putting a great deal of funds in this, and we're just buffering that up, helping buoying it, so that it's more effective, and we appreciate what's being done there, and it certainly is an enhancement to our city.
Well,
You look at what we spent in the Ninja Park, and you look at this, and the Ninja, I mean, seriously, they've put a lot of dedicated funds and hours into that park, and it's been a great blessing to the city.
But also our Highland residents use it. So
Have we
it's a benefit to
heard
the
back
city.
if they got their grants? Did they get their outdoor?
I haven't heard anything back from as far as the grants
Jay, have you
go.
heard anything back on the grants, sir?
I can reach out to them and ask
I mean,
them
because
if
we
they've.
applied for a grant also in that area.
Yeah. I know that they had volunteers out there the last couple of weeks. I'd gone by a couple of times and saw them doing work. When I got with Josh to see what we might want to help with the bike park for the city, that was his recommendation. And I actually said I was thinking more of a one-time purchase of some maintenance equipment or a shed or something like that. And this is what he thought would just be more beneficial. So
I see as it just enhancing something and reinforcing something that is happening, and we latch onto it and take advantage of it. To me, it's a great expenditure of funds to do something that supports a volunteer effort and donated money in a big, significant way.
Can I ask one question, though? Before we go ahead and throw an employee and everybody taking care of it, I mean, I jog up past this, so I know what's going on there, but has there been some communication with the adjacent neighborhood? Have they had like a neighborhood meeting, talk about it a little bit? Because you go in there and you do a lot of stuff, and I know that neighborhood quite well, and, they may block it if there's not good communication. So I think it's good that we're preparing for all this, but it'd be nice to have some communication with that neighborhood.
One of the leaders of that group is down there quite a bit, and I've talked to him a number of times. And the last time we talked, he has reached out and received very favorable response. There was some concerns that they had of where he was piling some dirt, and he literally listened to that and moved it, and the neighborhood was very appreciative of that. So I think that dialogue is happening. At least what I'm getting, I think I shouldn't try to give his name, I think it was Kevin, but one of the owners or one of the organizers of this is down there, and he's the one I've talked to a number of times, and it's been very favorable. As far as
I think that's good. I just want to make sure that there's communication going on with their HOA.
I think it's smart. The other thing, this is on the other side of the river. It's not right back up against the home, so it's hopefully as
If you expand this, though, it gets pretty close.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
I think what Ron said. I've heard that they've reached out to neighbors too.
They have.
Okay.
All right, next slide, Jay. So we, in the updated budget, we have some adjustments to our medical, dental, and workers' compensation rates. We got final rates, renewal rates on all of those, resulting in an increase citywide of about $6,400. There is a couple of aspects or components to that number. We saw really the increase to those rates created a larger increase than that, but there's a decrease because of we have a in lieu payment for employees that do not need the insurance. They can opt out, and they get 50% of what the city would have paid in premiums just added to their check. That in the prior version of the budget, that number was incorrect and too high. So we adjusted that to the correct number and increased the rates, and the result is this $6,384. The next one, we added in, we had discussed this and it was one of the priority items, but we didn't include it in the prior version of the budget, but now it's added back in, the work order and asset management software. This is a $110,000 first year cost. That includes the implementation and the first year of maintenance. And then the ongoing cost after this would be $45,000 per year. This is being split a few different ways. Administration has a small part of it. Parks and streets both have a chunk of it. Cemetery has a small part of it. And then the utility funds each have a part of it. So it's being spread out between all of the public works departments.
Wait,
And
is that the one where you can now text and say, hey, something needs to be fixed? Can you tell me again what that asset management software is?
Yeah, that's one thing with the work order system anyway. That should be a lot more user friendly. But as part of, sorry,
For the residents?
it was for the residents and the employees. I think honestly we were probably looking at more in-house and being able to use the remote devices for our employees. But it should have a better interface with residential requests as well. So
If there's a light out or something, they can directly text and say there's a light out, and then does it measure the response of the employee and having it checked off and showing, okay, this is when it was you're told, and then this is when it was fixed, and the response rate, time, everything like that?
it has all of that with it. Yep.
That'd be
And
really nice.
it would allow us to send out that response and let the resident know that it's been assigned a work order and the work order has been completed when it's completed, or an estimated time of when it would be completed.
Okay, so you would let the resident know that.
Yes.
I just think that would be so nice, because I would say one of the biggest things about being a city council member is people coming and saying, hey, can you fix this light? Can you fix this park or something? And I feel like a nagging mom, to be honest. I'm like, it's another thing that I have to, come up with. So that'd be super nice. Okay.
All right, and then the last one on this page, the council budget had $3,500 for the Chamber of Commerce. That has been removed.
Is all the council in favor of that?
Yes.
Yeah, but can we keep the 3,500 on to do something our own for businesses?
Did we not keep 3,500?
There is
I think there is
$3,500
one
for
that's
the council to have some type of an event.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is it so we can celebrate new businesses and things? Is that
Yeah,
what you're
and
doing?
also maybe have a business lunch where we just invite the businesses in Highland and come and hear what their concerns are specifically about Highland.
And the potential of organizing our own chamber.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, next one, Jay. Last slide for me. So we removed the splash pad cameras from the Parks Capital Improvement Fund. That's a decrease of $75,000. And then this last item, we discussed in detail with each of you in our individual meetings. I didn't put all the numbers up here, but just reworking how we're showing depreciation and savings for future capital replacement, and then some offsetting of what was shown in the previous version of the budget as prior year fund balance use to do projects has now been either eliminated or reduced. And then the amount that we're saving for future years has been reduced.
Now, on the top one, we removed the splash pad cameras. Is there a reason why we did that?
In our meetings with the various council members, it seemed to be the consensus that it wasn't as high of a priority as we originally thought.
Is that concerning that we have cameras where people are in the water with different attire? I don't know who was doing it. I just wasn't sure where that came from.
It just seemed creepy to me in one sense, and I couldn't see the value in another sense. It's like a foot of water. It's not like you're going to save someone from drowning.
I don't know if the cameras help us with any damage there. I'm just saying you got all of our parks were concerned about that.
Yeah, but we've had all this time, and I don't think we've had any problem.
Oh,
Maybe
we've
we
had
have.
problems there at the splash pad.
Have we? Well, then maybe I'm just operating with a little leg.
Well, no, and Ron, you're bringing up, I've always said as a person that has an office, and even here, there could be a bad experience going on at the splash pad, and as a adult man, I don't dare even look at that area. Is that,
Yeah.
I'm even nervous when the splash pad's even walking in that, and I have an office at Burt Brothers to come here. I don't even dare almost walk
I think
through
we
that
have to
area.
be sensitive to that.
But it's unfortunate.
It's unfortunate. It is.
But we have to also be careful. The only thing I think we need to ask Josh if we have damaged. I know that the splash pad area where some of the rocks inside the water was getting damaged. Now it was by skateboarders. They were coming and skateboarding and things that way. So I don't.
Yeah, so we can reevaluate this if the council
I
wants us
understand the
to
sensitivity.
reconsider.
I
So
would weigh
how
very
many-
heavily Joss's recommendation on
I
that.
just think $75,000 is ridiculous
That was
amount
the
for
other part,
cameras.
is it just seemed like it, the
Get a
amount.
How
ring
many
camera.
cameras would this have funded?
That I'm not sure. Chris, do
Do you know,
have an
Chris, how many
idea of-
cameras we were looking at?
I'm not sure, to be honest with
Yeah,
you.
75,000 just seems kind of high. Yeah, I agree with Councilwoman Rodella.
We're having so much fun.
All right, if there's not any other questions, we're going to move into a section for things that we want the council to consider or give further direction. The first one is going to be a discussion about the garbage rates. So I'll turn it over to Jay to talk about that.
All right. Good evening, council. I'm going to resist the urge to make a pun about talking trash, okay?
Okay.
I will not make that joke
Don't talk
as we
trash
talk
to
about
us.
garbage rates.
That was good, Jay. Real
So,
good.
we'll start out by talking about factors that are affecting our rates this year. We had a North Point increase of 5%. That went into effect in January of this year. So we're already experiencing that, but it hasn't been factored into our rates yet. I mean, that what I'm sharing with you is the factoring in of that rate. But when we did our rates last year, this was not a thing. So waste management increase of 5%, that will go into effect per our contract July of 2025. And we will, and just FYI, we will be bringing the contract renewal with Waste Management to you at a future city council meeting for consideration. Yes.
So the tipping fees were increased back in November for the cities,
Yes.
and that's at North Point. But I've sent some emails around because I just found out about New Era,
Yes.
which is the consortium that runs Bayview, which is the big landfill, and they've increased it $1 that starts July 1st. Does this take into account this?
Yes, that will.
Okay.
Yes.
So the 5% it takes that.
The 5% is what was discussed back in November, and then we approved it, and it went into effect in January.
Yeah, but this is a
Yes,
new
and then
increase.
yes.
And that's from New Era.
You can
Okay.
So there's
Oh, okay.
so yes, so there's a waste management increase of 5% that'll go into effect July of 2025, and then there is a potential increase of it's $1, but in the email you saw, Scott, he recommended doing a $1.50 increase.
Yeah,
for
I think
cities.
what he was trying to do. The problem is the waste, the North Point transfer station, they run our budget from January to January, and the city runs it from July to July.
Yeah.
And so there's that overlap. I think he's anticipating maybe increasing the tipping fee again. I don't know. Because I thought, how do you get $1.50 when they just raised it $1? But that's from New Era, and they don't. And I asked him, I said, are we going to absorb this at the transfer station? He says, oh no, we'll have to pass it on to the cities. So that's what he recommends, and it starts July 1st.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a probable increase. It is an increase.
Okay.
So that's, and I don't know how many tonnage we have. You probably get that from Waste Management. but-
We're at about 9,000 tons
okay.
annually. Yeah. So what we want to do is take you through a few rate scenarios. Each scenario assumes that each household has one garbage can, has opted for the additional garbage can, and has one recycling can as well. So that's what these rates are based off of.
That's me.
So the first option is the status quo, where we do not increase rates, and that results in a $195,000 deficit to our garbage fund. Not advisable, but wanted to give you the do nothing scenario. Option 2 is to charge enough to break even. We would have about $1,400 total annual net revenue. That would be a $4.38 per month increase for each household. And you can see how much the first can, second can, and recycling can go up in this scenario.
Just to make sure I'm understanding what you were talking about, with the assumption of 2 cans and a recycling can per house, that's just simply for the per month increase that we're showing here.
Yes.
The actual revenue that we're expecting from it is based on actual usage in the city.
Yes, like that.
Okay.
That 1,374 is what we anticipate an actual number would be based on our can count and everything. It's a 1 cent. Like the city would make 1 cent per can per household per month. So we're really, this is as break even as you can get without going negative.
So, Jay, can I ask a question on the recycling?
Sure.
Is the stuff we put in this recycling bin really being recycled? Because there was big questions because China at one point was taking a lot of the recycling. So what does Waste Management do with that? Do they just take it to the landfill, or is it actually being recycled?
It is being recycled. When this question was asked last time, I talked with our representative from Waste Management, and he did invite, he said, hey, if the council wants to come see our municipal recycling facility, we'd be happy to take them through a tour, and you can see the operations and how that goes. But in Utah, they recycle certain materials that there's a market for, and some of that is based on, it was very interesting. I dealt with garbage when I was working in Arizona, and we recycled glass there because you had a lot of wine and beer bottles. You don't have that as much here in Utah, and so actually that's the main reason why we don't recycle glass in Utah. But when I was city manager in Oregon, we had a pulp mill factory for Georgia Pacific, and they consumed almost all of the cardboard that was available west of the Mississippi. So it is used domestically when we can get it. China, you were right. China does vie for a lot of our materials, and if it's more cost effective to ship it over to them, then that is where it goes. But there is a market for recyclables.
So they are recycling it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is option 2, and this does not include that $1 increase from North Point. The way Aaron and I understood it is that it was a possibility. Scott, you've said we should count on it.
This is, we haven't met on the board to talk about this. This just showed up in my email, but New Era, which is a consortium of all these transfer stations, has said we will raise at $1. So I think we have to assume it's going to happen.
Okay.
And Neil said it can't come out of our funds because we're not got enough fund down there. So this was something that Salt Lake and all these other places. So Bayview's this huge landfill down on the southwest end of the lake, and there's several places that use it. So I'm not sure where they increased. I know there's been a big change down there.
So then the third option is once again a break-even scenario, but it does factor in the cost of the $1.50 per ton North Point increase. So that's about $1,300 in net revenue for the garbage fund. Once again, a 1 cent per can per month and that would result in a $5.06 per month increase for a household that has 2 garbage cans and a recycling can. So we were looking at a $4.38 or a $5.06, and it sounds like based on the information that Scott's provided tonight, that this option 3 is the more likely scenario.
So do you know what the total, this is what we're increasing the first can. How much does that first can really cost per month with this proposal?
Just a minute. I've
I'm
got
just
that
kind
on
of
my
curious. I mean,
laptop here.
I'll tell you, when I see these numbers, we were fighting the library. They was trying to do a little $5 increase, whatever. And here also we get our garbage. Just, whoop.
Yeah, I would be interested in what per can it's currently costing. And the second can I know is a smaller percentage of that amount because you want an incentive for people to have the second can without just doubling the cost.
Yeah.
But when you double the increase of the second can, you're narrowing that margin. At some point, do you lose that incentive that's built in that the second can isn't going to cost you as much as the first can, if you will? That it's kind of a built-in incentive, which I agree with in principle. But if we keep increasing the second can twice what the first can is, you're narrowing that difference.
But the second can is more of an option. I mean, the individuals.
It is an option. and I
They
get
can keep
that.
they can. Everyone needs one can. It's not if they need two.
I only use one can. Believe me, if we miss a month, a week, it's hard. We have people go home with their trash.
So I have those current rates. The first can is $11.33 per month. Additional can is $8.07, and recycle is $7.53.
Okay, hold it. So you're saying the first can's 11, so it's almost a
11.33.
10% increase from what, if you're adding, or maybe even 11% or 12% increase.
Yeah, 11%.
And what's the
And
second
then
can?
it's a 29% increase for the second can,
Man,
Yeah. That's
and then a 20% for recycling. So the cost to the city, so for that first can, the cost to the city is $12.53, but we're only charging $11.33. $8.07 for that second can, but it's costing the city $10.39.
oh.
And this is just as we spread it across the different tiers. And then the recycling is $7.53, but it's costing the city $9.04. So that's where those numbers are coming from.
Okay.
So Jay, if you have a third garbage can, is it still $2.35? The more you have, I mean, I just assume like third, fourth, fifth garbage cans, $2.35.
Let's see here.
Asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend. Our contract with Waste Management they don't actually contemplate a third garbage can. So
do we have how many people do?
if
But
I
Jay,
don't know
got
if we
someone in
have,
my neighborhood with 5.
I don't
Yeah.
know if we have somebody with three. I assume I don't know how that's calculated. The model, based on the rates that we have with, like Waste Management has residential trash, first cart, second cart, and the recycle first cart and additional recycling cart. So
Amazon has significantly increased our garbage quantity going through. If we could figure out a way to recycle cardboard, we would be a major contributor. My wife got a text from Amazon because she hadn't ordered for 24 hours and asked if they had done something wrong. That's a joke.
I think my wife got the same email. Anyway,
Jay, my understanding from what you had said earlier is that essentially all of the clean cardboard that goes into our recycle cans does actually get recycled, and most of it is recycled domestically.
This is based off of, when I was working as city manager in Oregon,
Gotcha.
nearly 10 years ago. I don't know what happens to it now, but at the time they're still in business, so I would imagine they're using a lot of the
Right.
domestic
So
cardboard.
Waste Management would have to tell us exactly.
Yeah, they could tell you where it's going. And that offer still is on the table if you want to visit the recycling center. It just kind of fell off the list of priorities as we were dealing with everything else. So, but totally happy to set that up for you all if you would like to, if that's something
Scott,
you'd like to do.
What are they attributing this
tour.
large increase for? Is it just a gas?
Well, they hadn't increased the tipping fee down to North Point for a long time. That's the one we did in November. We had a long discussion about it. And a lot of it was transportation costs, because that's a transfer station. It used to be the landfill, but they have to transfer it all down to Bayview. I don't know. All I know is what's been going on in the emails the last day or two with Neil, why New Era's increased their fee at Bayview. I know there's been a big changeover in staff and stuff there, but we haven't had a board meeting since they did that. But I thought I'd better pass along because he says it will happen July 1st. And I thought that's interesting because our next board meeting's in June. So I don't understand why they've increased it, because that's like a $3 plus increase per ton for every city. It seems a lot, but we didn't get to vote on that. New Era did, so I don't know.
Taxation without.
And I suggested Neil. I said I think that North Point should absorb a lot of this, but the budget down there is kind of fluid because it depends on how much construction and demolition goes into the Fairfield landfill that's run by North Point. So it's kind of a complicated thing, but it's just one more fee that's being increased on our citizens this year. So it's just kind of hard, which would make an argument against increasing the road fee. So yeah.
So
or not the road fee, but the safety
on the
fee.
options, is there kind of a suggestion for staff? Or, option one, I don't think really is an option because we're going to have to eat so much. But option two, but it sounds like we need to kind of look. Now you're saying enough to break even, but option three is we're anticipating an increase, is what you're saying.
Yes, at option 3, this one anticipates factoring in. So we're not eating the $1.50 a month or $1.50 a ton tipping fee to the tune of 9,042 tons a year.
It seems to me like we need to go with option 3 and cover those costs. But along with that, perhaps we should consider a communication education campaign encouraging recycling and being clear about what's recyclable, because that will keep our costs down going forward because we won't have to be paying tipping fees.
It's compelling if it costs the city X that we should be charging X.
We need we need to educate the residents about the recycle, like because I do think a lot of us for a long time, when COVID came, we heard they weren't buying it, and so that message got out there. So I hear a lot of residents, hey, are they really taking our recycling and using it? Now we need to document that to verify that that's really happening, but that's that education, because it is cheaper for them to maybe look at the recycle before a second garbage can if they can recycle more.
Yeah, the only thing about recycle is it only gets picked up every other week.
Yeah.
So, I mean.
But it doesn't stink. It doesn't stink.
You would think.
And from our standpoint, even if people aren't taking a recycle can instead of a second can, the more that gets pulled into the recycling, the less we're paying for tipping fees. And so long term, that keeps our costs down and allows us to avoid increasing costs in the future.
Okay. I think we're leaning towards option 3.
Okay. We can factor that into our budget calculations then. Okay.
All right, I think it's my turn again. Okay, so the second item for council consideration is something I sent you guys an email about. My days are blurring together. Recently, yesterday. So as we discussed, we had put a placeholder in the budget for a 3% increase on staff wages while we were finishing our wage study. So that's been concluded, and there are only a handful of positions that 3% does not cover what is needed to keep up with the market. So I sent you an email with some positions that need more, that per the recommendation from our market study, need more than a 3%. So when you factor all of those in, it means going from, instead of a 3%, a 3.14 when you look at the entire of everything we pay staff, right? it's more than 0.14 for those adjustments, and those are all detailed in that Excel document that I sent council. I will say Doug's superpower continues to prevail, and he might have already found a couple of underlying errors with the data. So I'm double checking a few of those before I resend that information out to you. Well, I put quadruple checking in this out of a joke because I promise you, we really did try to check. And so, but unfortunately, there were a couple of things off there. So,
And just to put in a little plug for the staff there, that what's really happening and what drove a lot of some of the inaccuracies in the final thing is that this has been a relatively long-term process, and the data has been changing under them as it happens.
As staff changed, we forgot to change the wages of those new staff.
So I think as this comes in, this is, what's a good discussion I think council needs to have is, let's assume that market is 100%, or at $100,000. Are you wanting to keep everything at market? Are you wanting to be over market with the staff wages? Are you wanting to be at 95%, 95? Where is it we want to be as a city with staff wages? And I think that's another important aspect. Where are we trying to say, hey, we want to be paying everything equal, or are we saying no? Are there other benefits that we believe that that should come into consideration, or hey, there's disbenefits by working for the city, so we should compensate.
So I will say I'm sorry, Councilmember Smith, go ahead.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think some of this we probably need to kind of talk about in executive session or something a little bit.
Absolutely, and I'm not asking for direction tonight. I just wanted to, as a reminder, this is something that needs to be solved over the next month.
And I understand where you're coming from, Aaron. We have a great staff, and I want them to be compensated appropriately. However, at the same time, we are a city of 20 to 21,000. We don't have some of the revenue some of these other cities are. Do we need to compete with some of these bigger cities? I don't know. I think we just need to have a good discussion, and I think the mayor brings up a good point, and I think Councilwoman Rodella in one of her emails did too. I mean, there are some other benefits for working in a small city with this city, and I think we just need to look at the benefits pretty carefully and just make sure it's pretty fair, because again, at some point with these yearly raises, and I think inflation raises are appropriate, but at the same time, you're going to outstrip your funds before long. And so then we have to really scramble. I mean, we've been lucky the last few years. Sales tax has been going up, and it may continue, but we don't know.
So we don't have Rob here. As we talk about going to closed session, I think it's about specific individuals. We can go to closed session. But if it's just generally about wage increases in general, I don't know.
No, because it's character, professional competency of an individual, and so it would need to be in relation to individuals.
And I'm not entirely sure, depending on what we're really talking about with regard to individual salaries, if that necessarily falls under that professional competency heading either.
And certainly, again, not something that I want.
Ask Mark, but you've got that market study, and you're talking about some people getting significant raises.
Yeah. And you're going to be talking about
individuals. It's got to come to the public for sure, but
it does, especially
set up
3 of those need to come to you from a public hearing, right? Because of that new state law. So I wanted to give you at least a month notice, right, to decide what you wanted to do with that. And I'm happy to walk through the market study with you. One thing I wanted to add to your point, Mayor, is we shoot for average in looking at the ranges, but not necessarily in looking at every person in the range. So we're not trying to make sure that every single individual is paid average when we look at the salaries of, say, a treasurer, right? We're not saying that, okay, so treasurers make on average this, and so our treasurer has to make this. Our wage study looks at what other cities are making, but then it also takes into account the number of years they've been with the city, or the number of outside years that they have, and how we score the job in terms of difficulty of the position. And so if we think that our job is less difficult than others do, or if this person is new, in the city, they're not going to be pegged at the middle point. They're going to be on the lower end of that.
But one of the other aspects, this is what I think has come up, we saw in an email, was, okay, are we hey, it's 4-day week, it's a 4-day work week, versus a 5-day work week. Is there other aspects that are coming in and this comes in with public safety, to be very open. That's why I'm going with public safety. Their question always is, are you trying to keep us at average? This is what our neighboring are you saying you're okay to have us a little bit lower? And that's why I just asked that question. That always seems to be what public safety is. Hey, what are we trying to do as public safety? Are we okay if the average is $30, but we're going to be at $29.50? And I think that's, as a council, what I was bringing that question up for. So.
Absolutely. So happy to continue these discussions offline in appropriate meetings. I did want to share with you, so we have tried to start gathering, what are other cities doing? And again, not saying we have to do exactly what they're doing, but if you look on the next slide, so this is information that city managers have been collecting, and so this was for general employees. I know that the mayor sent an email around to fellow mayors looking at public safety employees, but this was for the rest of city staff, basically. So I've narrowed this down to one thing Councilmember Rodella's email asked is, do we look at cities with similar populations, right? Because you've just used, basically, what I've been told, the direction I've gotten, I felt like, was to use Utah County cities or neighboring Salt Lake cities, basically, like thinking that most of our employees are not going to move for jobs. They're going to stay in the same geography. Now, that does pin us against some big cities, right, to Councilmember Smith's point, who have a large budget, such as Lehigh. However, I do think we need to recognize that we are competing with Lehigh for employees. And I'm not saying we have to match them one for one, but we need to stay competitive with them. So again, and none of these are final. All of these cities are in the beginning parts of their budget, just like we are. But this is what city administrators or managers are saying that they are looking at for a staff increase for this year. So we've got kind of some high outliers like Utah County and Eagle Mountain that are pretty high, but and then the low is Provo. So when you average them all out, of the ones I have at this point, it's 44.6%. So when we're talking about a 3%, I feel that it's not overly aggressive, right? It seems to be appropriate when looking at the market surrounding us. And Councilmember Smith, you're right. I owe Councilmember Rodell an answer. Some of those things are going to take us a little while to gather, but we will work on doing that.
So this is 3% ongoing, and then there's a one-time performance at all, or just this?
Just 3%. That's all that's in the budget right now.
I mean, you look politically, and I go, okay, there's a couple of entities here that I think, one, they probably were underdoing things when they've tried to catch up. And some are probably overspending. And I'll be honest, I think Utah County's, it's like we got two different county commissioners going on. We had 5 years ago certain type of county commissioners, and now we have a little bit more of a spending type of county commissioners right now. And maybe they're trying to catch up. They know their budget better than I do. But we're seeing some big increases from Utah County. We've seen some property tax increases with them doing that. And that might be we need to reach out to our county commissioners and say, what are you doing? I'm just saying, we try to hold it in the realm. It's time that they hold their wages in the realm and some of their costs in the realm, because they're part of the problem. And if they pick up on it, I hope they do, because I'm not happy what I'm starting to see out in the county right now.
Well, the county has a lot more funds.
They do. But nay, should they be spending them? I mean, if they can stay in a budget, and I'm just but anyway, there's my rant.
Okay. Happy to continue this conversation with you. All right, next slide, please. Okay, let's talk about fund balance. This is the last thing we need your direction on. So if you remember, we right now in the budget, we do budget to use $80,000 of fund balance for phase 2 of the Alpine Highway fence. So this would be year 2 of that project. With that use of fund balance, there is a net revenue in the general fund, so revenue over expenses of almost $300,000. And so I asked each of you in our meetings, but I've gotten divided answers, and so I wanted to ask this again. What do you want to do with that $300,000? Do you have priorities you want to hit? Next slide, please, Jay.
Well, does that up and beyond the 35% that we keep in reserves, or is that just the full?
I think there's a question here.
Yeah.
Yes, that's beyond reserve money, right? So you have two options with it. You can leave it there so that it can go into reserves and help to get us back towards 35%. If you remember this budget year, we anticipated using quite a bit of our fund balance to fund Highland Boulevard, the roundabout there, our portion of the construction, which at this point, it's looking like we have a grant for. I don't think we're going to have to spend all of the funds that we anticipated using in fund balance, but to the budget we have at this point, we are going to be decreasing that fund balance. So do you want to use that 300 to help build the reserves back up again, get us to about 28% of reserves? Or the other priority I've heard out of council is to start making some intersection improvements at 10400 and 6000 West, specifically for pedestrians there. So as Chris, that was a different project. So Chris has estimated we could do, phase 1 would cost about $250,000. So we could use that money again and to go towards that, which would still put us at our reserves at about 26%. So those are the two options that I've heard from council, and Chris does have a map of what that intersection improvement could look like too.
Is he going to show that to us now?
What? Go ahead.
So for years, we had our fund balance at 25%. It's just been the last 3+ years that we've gone up to 35. So.
Yeah, there's kind of the drawing of what we're thinking. We could install about 350 linear feet of curb and gutter and then fix the asphalt. You can see kind of the black on that west side of it, so that we have a good road section. And then we would put tailings along for a pedestrian pathway from that intersection north to where it would tie into the existing sidewalk to the north. And from there, there's continuous sidewalk all the way up to the pedestrian crossing that's near the elementary school. And then we've got the Safe Roads project that will be installing sidewalk on the west side. So we feel like this would be a really good first phase for this project to make a good safe walking path up to the elementary school. And I kind of showed a little bit on the south side of the road, kind of more on 10400 on that corner, just to have a complete ADA ramp on that corner there, and we'd probably do a little bit of taper, but I didn't really include much sidewalk on the other side since there is some sidewalk on the south side. It may have some tripping hazards that we may have to take a look at, but just if we're going to phase this out to be easier to swallow funding-wise, I thought this would be a good option.
So is this the property that was given to the city from the church?
We're in the process of getting it from, yes.
So we don't have to purchase the property, it's being donated, right?
That's correct.
So this is the cost to put the curb and gutter, the 350 linear feet.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, this is the area of Highland, and I was mentioning this to Aaron, this is kind of where we have the country feel, and I know for many times people, didn't mind it, but we have an elementary school of Highland Elementary one side, we have the junior high down the other. We are seeing quite a bit of walking in this area.
Plus we've got a huge park that we just built.
Yeah, I'm saying we're starting to see some more movement. We do have a lot of kids at the Ruby Estates. We've had some development at that Ruby Estates with kids walking. If they're walking to elementary, where they're starting to hit that intersection. It just, this is why we're saying this. We need to start looking at sidewalks at some time in the city. And this is, and we have been somewhat. So, okay. Any input here?
Will you go back one slide,
Did we
Jay?
say we could get a grant for this also, or no?
We can apply for Safe Routes for this. It takes about 2 years, so it depends on if you want to put some money up front now, or if you want to wait and do Safe Routes, or maybe Safe Routes is phase 2 of this, right? And we put in actual sidewalk and not tailings.
So does it help with the grant if you've already done some work on towards it? I mean, it shows that we're committed, or?
Yeah, I think it would help. I definitely think so, yes.
What do you think, Kim? I mean, you kind of work with these grants.
I mean, this is pretty much out of all the federal grants out there, this is the only one out that has come out and is still going strong. So, I mean, we have a good chance of getting this grant.
Okay.
And if you're shovel ready, it's even better. Just
When the money's there, yeah.
yeah.
The one thing I think we have to be careful when we say we have this surplus, this is assuming that there's not going to be a recommendation to fund that extra fire personnel. You know, the board today did not, you know, in the proposed budget did not fund that extra fire person, but it could all change on the 13th if we come in. Now, and this is the question, and all of you know that we've kind of been talking a little bit with Alpine. I don't know if we can get the interlocal and how that all gets put together. So I just think we have to be careful on funding. I think this is a great option. I don't know if we have to put it in the budget right now. You always could have that as an extra. And if it comes out, then it's, hey, this might be where we want to spend it. So.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach. And one other thing that personally I would like to start doing in the budget is putting in, maybe it's $200,000 of every single year we have unexpected things that come up, and it is reasonable to think that we're going to spend $200,000. So let's budget that so that we're not looking like we're all balanced and we end up pulling from reserves during the year. Let's be balanced based on what we really expect to spend.
Just FYI, the deadline for the grant, I think, is June 26th.
So it'd be good to have a project planned, which is what this is. So,
Okay.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, council, at this point, don't plan to spend this money. Let's wait and see what happens with public safety.
No, Scott, I think just said maybe you want to plan for it.
I think we need to plan, especially if we're going to try to get the grant. And
But
if
not-
it has to go to public safety, I guess we'll just have to say.
So, sorry, plan to use the 300,000 for,
Well, the 250.
okay, for the intersection improvement and not do the grant then?
No.
We're hoping
Oh.
what we're thinking is if we start this process with the 250, we might be able to get the grant because we're further down the process
To finish it.
to finish it.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah, I
we
would
commit our
do this and
250
the
and ask
grant,
for
apply for the
additional
grant,
money.
yeah.
I see what you're saying. Okay. Okay. That would mean that public safety, if that added position gets in, we would have to figure out funding for that.
Yeah, but we'll know within 2 weeks where we're at.
I see what you're saying
I mean,
because of the
we'll
grant
know
deadline.
where
Okay.
things are at in 2 weeks.
All right. Thank you for the clarification. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm turning it back over to David.
Yep, last couple of slides here. So we just wanted to go over potential changes still to come, things that we're still working on. So next slide, Jay. One of those is water rates, still undergoing a study with LRB, feeding information to Fred and working through that process. So once we have a better idea of that, one thing that we do know that we've communicated before, the study that was done a few years back recommended incremental increases in the rates over the years that have not happened, which could be part of the reason why we are feeling like we potentially need an increase. So then another study that we're currently working on is Cemetery Fund. This one is with Zions Bank Public Finance. Jay's working with them on looking at everything in the cemetery. Could have an impact on our budget for our veterans area project, the wall project that we have there. Then the only thing left is just to show you a calendar of May. It's a crazy month, so buckle in and enjoy all these meetings. But this is everything to look forward to for the next 30 or so days.
So can I ask a question, David? So in our discussion on the garbage fee increase, we're talking approximately $60 a year per household. So we had all these TSSD increases and sewer rate increases, but how much does that cost per household a year? I mean, it's partially in effect. Are there more increases with our new budget? I thought there were.
So we built those in. So they were done during fiscal year 25, we built those into the revenue amounts for our.
So it's already there.
Yes.
But additionally, how much would you estimate that's costing per household?
I would
You
have to
have a-
look back at the study that we did. I don't have those numbers on my mind.
We aren't asking for a fee increase come July, though, for sewer.
Right, there's nothing
Okay.
new. It's already been instituted.
It happened in January.
In
Okay.
January.
Okay, so you're asking what the sewer was in addition to then what garbage would be.
So garbage is $60 during with fiscal year 26 if we do with what we've talked about, but we've already just put that on top of a sewer fee that started January 1st. I just like to get a better idea because it's, people ask, well, this has gone up and this has gone up and this has gone up. and-
Yeah. I can find that
Yeah.
again and send you an email with that information.
Okay, I'd appreciate it.
In addition to the garbage rates that we just discussed, the only other rate we're anticipating potentially needing to ask council to raise would be the water rate, basically. So that, as far as utilities go, it would just be garbage and maybe water in July. Understanding we already did a sewer adjustment in January.
So are you talking about culinary or personal
Culinary.
care? Okay.
And we may potentially be increasing cemetery fees as well, but that's not an across the board. That's a use fee. Is that okay?
But I think we have in there July 1st, we always have a increase for the cemetery plots, right? Are you thinking higher?
Yes.
That goes up every year.
You're talking a greater increase is what we're talking
Potentially, yep. So that fund study's going on right now to look at where are we at, right, in the payback to the general fund and considering that.
Are we also looking at neighboring, if we're really low compared to other neighboring cemeteries?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we're low. Buy your plots now. That's what I like. Yeah, you want to get it before. Okay. Anything else on the budget?
No, that's all we had for you tonight, unless you have any other further questions or items you wanted to discuss.
I just appreciate the work that's been put into this. You've simplified it to the point where I get it, so that's a big accomplishment. I mean, seriously, I think you've done an excellent job. There's still some questions that'll get answered, and I'm confident we'll get to the right answers.
So, Council, you've met with staff and different things. There was a proposal for 3 staffing levels where we had, I think, 1 for cemetery, 1 for PI, and 1 for storm drain. I think.
1 cemetery / building, 1 split between PI and water, a meter reading position, and then 2 part-time in storm drain.
So that I'm just hopefully you've been able to kind of talk through that. Those will be ongoing expenses, except the part-time is something you can, pull back. I don't have as much concern, I think, about the PI because I can see now with the meters there's going to be a lot of questions, possibly some maintenance and some things that way. I do get a little nervous when we look at the cemetery increase, and I understand we have some building situations. That's the one position I'm a little nervous because I think that means they're trying to take over the cemetery maintenance. That also then probably means you're hiring another part-time worker to come in and help mow, and then you might have more equipment. I'm just going, that position seems to have a little bit heavier impact long-term. That's just, that's when I kind of waffle a little bit.
And I should have said, we ended up leaving those positions in because when I met with you, I won't say it was unanimous, but a majority of council members told me they were supportive of those positions. So they stayed in the budget.
I'm just saying, those are the only thing really on the budget I was looking at.
And I will say too, the storm drain position, we're looking into the option of seeing if it is cheaper to contract that instead of hiring part-time employees, because we would have to also purchase equipment for that too. So we're seeing what is the cheaper alternative there.
And I think it's not strictly a question of what is cheaper. Even if it is slightly more expensive to contract it out, that may still be a better option.
Because we have to buy equipment. Even though you got the 2 part-time employees, I think it anticipated buying a trailer that would be like a pump, a back truck trailer or back trailer or whatever. So
On the stop and waste valves, was every neighborhood and resident given the option to put a stop waste valve in rather than just the shut-off valve?
I honestly don't know the answer to that. I thought that they were.
I
but
thought they were too.
I couldn't tell you for sure.
And the challenge is going to be, they only last 1 or 2 years, but it's on the resident, and it's on their side of the meter. So as that fails, they're going to have some leakage, they're going to have some expenses, but it's their decision to put it in. I decided to put it in to avoid freezing. But it'll be interesting how that plays out, because I do think they're not designed to go for 10 years. They just do 2 or 3 years, and that's
Okay, can I ask a non-related question real quick? This is of Chris. When is the park maintenance building finished? What's the estimated date of completion? Because I have people ask me all the time, when are they going to finish that building?
I think right now, the last time I actually saw a completion date, we're blowing by that right now. And I honestly don't know. We're working on some issues. We're having some issues with the contractor at this point. We've got some change orders we've had some issues with that we're trying to work through. I do think that once we get all of this straightened out, we've got a new superintendent that's going to be taking over the project. I want to say we could probably look at around the end of May to get it completed. But I hate to go too far out there. I'm still skeptical of that.
So as we look at the calendaring, did we send an email out or text out about?
I sent a text, and I haven't told Chris this yet, but our 8:30 tour is going to be a council's invited as well. So the mayor and I were going to go tour some of these public works projects, the park maintenance building, Highland Family Park. What am I forgetting? The pump project.
Is this Thursday?
On Thursday at 8:30 in the morning. If you're available, you're more than welcome. I had Rob notice a notice of quorum in case we had a quorum show up. So if not, we can schedule a different time for you. But if you're interested,
I would like to come, but I have a board meeting at 10.
Well, we could be over. Where's your board meeting at the USA?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If we start at 8:30, you could leave anytime you need to go.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd like to invite you. We're going to go to.
Where are you starting again?
We'll start here.
we're going to meet here.
We'll meet here, and then we'll leave out from here.
First stop, do you think the parks maintenance building?
Yeah, then we could go by the park and then down to the PI.
So what's the estimated date of completion on the park? I know it's coming along pretty quickly. You're still working on the ball diamond, right?
We're still working on a few other items like that too. I think we still have to get the roofs finished on the sheds. We still have some issues with the grass cells, getting those installed, and a couple of things with the field. Yeah.
So are we going to have a grand opening when everything's done?
We've talked about that in the past, but we haven't, actually penciled in a date for it.
Yes, and I think I forgot to respond. So we're gonna, if you remember it's on here,
Open
right?
house.
Our open house will be at the park, and then we've talked to Chad, who's interested in doing like an opening of the baseball field with his teams as well, middle of May as well, right? It seemed like on your text. If you remember, the fields won't be open until the fall fully, because we're trying to let the grass grow in a little bit. So it might be a phased
fall where we can
grand
say everything's
opening.
Open, because right now, if you go on Thursday, if you go walk, you'll look at the soccer fields and you're going, are they really going to thicken up? And I know there's some weeds, and I was looking and going, oh boy, I hope it thickens up, because it does not look too thick right now.
So are we, because I know at the baseball field, we said 3 days a week we're opening up for practices. Soccer fields, are you doing the same as well, or are you saying stay off the grass all summer long?
Right now, it's stay off the grass at this point until it grows in.
Okay.
We seeded that.
Yeah.
Chris, on the traffic calming on Country Club Drive, east of the painted stripes, look fantastic. And just a great job that you did. And I honestly, truly believe it's a pretty inexpensive way to look at traffic calming that everybody could agree with. I was supposed to get half of the neighbors in that street to sign off on it. By the time I talked to him, Ted Cannon, who is the mastermind of all that, worked with Andy on that, had already talked to every single neighbor, and every single neighbor is happy about it. They're glad. And I just walked it today, and I took a little video and sent it to the council members and to Aaron. It's a great job, and I really believe it's going to slow down that traffic. It's narrower, more narrow, and as such, you have a tendency to want to drive slower. It just feels narrow enough that I can't go too fast through here. Even though there's no cars, there's no difference. It's just painted. But that paint, I think, makes a difference. And I hope in the future, when we look at traffic calming, there are less expensive ways that we should be looking at traffic calming. And that compared to some kind of speed bump table, any of those are going to be more expensive. And I think this is we're headed the right direction on this. We ought to try to get some data on this as soon as we can in terms of what the average speed is now after the paint is on there compared to what we had before.
I do feel like, and there was a situation, Aaron, that was brought up, about, we did have, and that's good, maybe ask Chief Williams, we had a vehicle that was stolen that was a Highland maintenance, or I guess up there at our park maintenance building or up at our public works building, we had a trailer and truck stolen here. Chief, I assume it had logos or with our flock cameras or anything that we caught or anything that way?
We have not found it. Flock cameras in Highland look at traffic coming into Highland as opposed to leaving it.
Okay.
But we've also checked the neighboring agencies' cameras, and there's nothing that's come up.
I'll check my house.
Just so you're aware, Council, we did lose a truck and trailer.
It just disappeared.
Well, it got stolen. So, okay.
It's like Christy Noem's purse.
I'm sorry, what?
Like Christy Noem's purse. I thought that was ironic.
Anything else, Council? If not, we can go ahead and conclude we don't really need a motion, so we want to thank you for coming out to our work session. We have City Council meeting next week, so thank you. And those who'd like to join us on Thursday at 8:30.
And we meet here.
Meet here.
8:30.
Not tomorrow, Thursday morning, 8:30. Yeah.